Well, currently my favorite song is Fitness Blues, which I wrote about 6 months ago. And it goes, I ask myself this every day. It goes, should I work out or should I take a rest? I don't know what to do, but I want to look and feel my very best. So I think I'll train because I still got fat to lose, but I think I got the fitness blues. Fitness blues, we all get them.
Welcome to Escape Your Limits podcast. Today, our guest is a three-time Mr. Olympia, Fitness Hall of Famer and bodybuilding legend. Few people have beaten Arnold Schwarzenegger at anything, let alone done it at the top title in the greatest bodybuilding competition on the earth. But this gentleman, who's synonymous with bodybuilding because his incredible emphasis on aesthetics, symmetry, and muscle proportion. It's this attention to detail that has ensured he's not just a name of yesteryear with an incredible physique, but still an inspiration to millions through his mind, body, and spirit in anything he does. So today, we welcome Mr. Frank Zane to the Escape Your Limit podcast.
Well, thanks very much.
And thank you for inviting me into your fitness studio. It's
my pleasure.
Quite a special place. So Frank, just everybody, well, I'm sure everybody's heard of the name, but I guess not everybody's probably familiar with the story, up until when you were competing. And I wondered if just to give us a bit of context, whether you'd tell us a little bit about how you got into that line of sport and what was a bit of your background.
Well, I've started it seemed like everything that I've stuck with in my life occurred at age 14, and bodybuilding was one of those things. It was bodybuilding, archery, Boy Scouts, yoga, meditation, playing harmonicas.
Right.
All those, and I'm still doing all of those things to some extent. And so I discovered bodybuilding, and it ended up with buying a set of dumbbells and working out in my basement, and I saw muscles coming out in 2 weeks. Came in handy because I lived in a sort of a tough area, and my younger brother was always mouthing off and getting in fights, and I would end up finishing him. So once I started training, that disappeared because I had the look of somebody being, big and built. So I didn't have that problem anymore, and I just liked doing it. It felt really good. And then I discovered there was such a thing as contests, bodybuilding physique contests. So I trained for one and went to it. It was near Allentown, Pennsylvania. And while it was a novice contest, and there was like 50 guys in it, and I was pumping up backstage, ready to go on stage, and Bob Hoffman, the father of American weightlifting, was there, because these were all weightlifting contests all day long, and at night they'd have the physique.
Right.
And Hoffman came over to me and he said, "Young man, if I had a physique like yours, I'd walk around with my shirt off all the time." And that was enough for me to hear, and I believed him, and that I would be the greatest at one time. So basically that was one of those things that somebody tells you out of time in your life when you're very impressionable,
right.
And it serves to motivate you for the rest of your life, and it did.
So when you were younger, going on this sort of journey, where did you go to learn how to get in shape in terms of, where did you learn about how to work out and what to eat? What was your inspiration or mentors at that time?
The closest place. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and there were some people trained there, and I trained with them. We got motivated and everything, and then teaching in different cities, basically I just built programs up where I was.
Right.
Then I moved to Florida, and that was a really stepping my training up to a new level. Trained there for 3 years, and then moved to Southern California, which was where it was happening then.
Right.
And that's when it really took off in 1969, when I landed in Southern California.
Right.
And just every year, I was still teaching there. 8 years I taught in California. And in the meantime, built up my business. I had a mail order business, and conditions for training got better and better and better. And got to the point where it was just perfect, and I took advantage of it and did my best training and won.
So in terms of your conditioning then, did you know, were you, I guess, naturally conditioned most of the time, or did you have to learn about how to get your body ready for shows and get lean? How did you deal with that part?
Well, I was lean to start. You know, I was always a skinny kid.
Right.
And so for me, it was just about putting on muscles. I learned that by doing a heavy leg work and squatting, I was able to build my legs up and my body weight. And gradually everything else came up too.
Right.
So I ended up competing at 5'9", competing at around 190 pounds.
Right.
Which was my perfect weight for that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I won the Olympia 77, 78, 79. Before that, I won a Universe 3 times. And, you know, it was just a gradual growth process and learning along the way and training with a lot of different people and learning from them.
Yeah.
So.
And how much of it was genetics compared to good training? You know, if you look at, we talked about it earlier in terms of nutrition, genetics and training. How much emphasis was on each part of that, do you think?
There's always that question, heredity and environment, so I don't really know the percentage. But basically, when you talk about your genetics, I divide that into 2 parts. One is structure, bone structure, muscle structure, and metabolism, your ability to turn food and exercise into muscle.
Right.
And so I think I was fortunate in the structure part, not that I had a big structure, I had very small bones, but I had a good structure for bodybuilding, small hips and wide shoulders, wide clavicles. And so, Steve Reeves was my bodybuilding idol. I really looked up to him in that development and sort of patterned my training after what I thought he did. And, you know, as far as metabolism, my metabolism wasn't the best as far as just naturally. There's some guys I know that have such good metabolisms for this, they can walk past the barbell rack and get a pump from that. But not me. I had to work hard and find out all the intricacies, and I did. And I learned what was best for me, and it evolved over the years. And
right.
I took photos along the way and studied them and made changes, and it worked.
Yeah.
I learned it wasn't about how big I could get, because I couldn't get that big. But I tried certain years, and you know, it didn't work as good as I thought it would.
Yeah.
And I ended up just going for getting more shape and definition and lines and proportion and all that, presentation. And you know, it was a lot of work, but it paid off finally. It's, you know, that's the thing is I have a lot of perseverance for things I do. I hang on and do them for a long time because I enjoy them. But in the process, I get really good at it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I have is focus. I have really tremendous focus. I'm not asking to do multitasking, is by saying, but I can focus on one thing and really zone everything else out. And that's why I'm good at this.
Yeah.
Because when I do a set, I'm totally there for it.
Right.
Workout.
Right. And how many times a week were you working out when you were at your peak?
3 days out of 4.
3 days on, 4.
3 days on, 1 day off. I did a 3-way split routine, work a third of my body each time. Right. Then rest on the 4th day.
Right.
Now I don't do anywhere near that because I'm 75 now and I don't really need much.
Right.
You know, I'm lighter, I'm leaner. I don't need as much. I don't even need as much sleep. If I get 1 upper body workout a week, that's 1 leg workout, 1 upper body workout, that's adequate for me.
Right. And how long were your workouts at that time? What sort of?
Then, 2 hours usually.
Really?
Maybe more, and sometimes maybe twice a day sometimes.
Right.
I mean, I wrote everything down. That's the thing is I was a chemistry major in college when I started out, and I earned the nickname the chemist because my approach was like that. I kept track of everything. I kept journals.
Right.
And so I've published books like that. I have one called The Workouts that's on Kindle now.
Right.
190 workouts that I actually did over a period of 4 years' time, arranged in order. Some of them are pretty horrific, I mean, as far as what I actually did. And I actually offered a prize to somebody who could duplicate those workouts, and nobody ever did it.
No.
I mean, it's what I did over a 4 years period of time, condensed into 1 year. I think maybe some young guys can do this, but nobody ever tried it. But in the meantime, I've come out with other books that have been very successful. 91 Day Wonder Body is one of them.
Right.
It's 3 months of what to do every single day for the workout. And it goes through all the workouts I've written about. There's 18 different ones, from full body routine to 2-way split to 3-way splits. And it progresses through all of them, and you write it all in the book. tells you how to eat, what to eat as well. So
Right.
it gives people a really good guide as to what to do.
Right.
Answers the question, will you make up a routine for me? Here it is.
Yeah, it's already there.
I've made it up and I've reproduced it as a book, so it's there for everybody.
And we talked earlier about your leg machine, and you were talking about the emphasis against really heavyweight, and it was just more about form. When you were, again, sort of at your peak, were you putting heavyweight to sort of get that build that muscle, or were you?
I was.
You was, okay.
I was training heavy because that was what was in vogue at the time, but we never did what we call now slow negatives.
Right.
Where you lower the weight back to starting position much more slowly than it was all about getting the weight up.
Okay.
You know, forced reps and all that stuff. And for bench press would be basically like that, you know. And now what I went to eventually was slow negatives like that.
Right.
Negative, you know, always slower than the positive. I still do that because you're stronger on the negative, and so go slower, get more resistance. Otherwise, you're only getting a muscular contraction for half your rep.
Right.
The negative doesn't get anything. It just puts you back in a position to do another heavy positive. And actually, I've learned that it's the positive heavy. It's the heavy weights that really end up injuring you.
Right.
You go heavy and heavy, you wobble out of the groove, and you pull something. So I've been through all of that, and I've learned all about injuries because I've had a lot of them. So I know about how to get them, how to avoid them, and how to treat them.
Yeah. And were you getting the same sort of results in terms of your physique by training that way, where a little bit lighter but slower?
Even more.
Even more, really.
Yeah. I mean, they both work. It's just that one is safer.
Yeah.
More controlled.
Yeah.
Actually, in 1982 was the year that I was in London for the Mr. Olympia that year. And I came in too big. Everybody was saying to me, you need to get bigger. So I figured I'm going to weigh 200 for the show, and I did. But in paying attention to that number, I lost track of getting ultra defined. And so if I was a little bit lighter and more defined, I think I would have won that show easily, but I didn't.
Right.
Because of that. But that was the last time I got heavy.
Yeah.
After that, I just stayed leaner.
Yeah.
Because it was a better look for me.
Yeah.
When you gain weight and get big like that, basically what gets big is this area from nipples to kneecap. It basically is the central part of your body, and that's not what if this gets thicker, the other parts don't get that much more developed.
Right.
You just get blockier in through here, and it doesn't look good. I always look better with more of a tapered, smaller waist, more definition.
Yeah.
But that's what you learn along the way.
Yeah.
By the time I was all through competing, I knew a lot. But not so much I could apply for myself, but I could use to help other people. And that's basically when I switched from doing competitive bodybuilding to doing bodybuilding as a method of earning a living, teaching other people, because I have a background as a teacher.
Right.
And I like teaching. It's just that I like the topic of what I'm teaching now better than what I taught before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know how to teach.
Yeah. And back then in the 70s and 80s, people were, when we spoke about it off camera, but a lot smaller. Were drugs still around then? Was that still part of the sport?
They were just coming into it. It wasn't really much around then, and basically it was all legal with doctors and prescription and all that.
Right.
And so nobody really went off the deep end with that stuff because there was nothing around to do it with.
Yeah. And what are you, for a lot of people, I guess, are coming in to the business now, and I guess it's a big part of what people think they need to get there. What's your view after being through, I guess, the whole spectrum? What's your view? If you're in competitive sport, is it something that people should do but safely? What's your perspective on that?
The way it is now is nobody really. It's a stigma to admit to doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, to level a playing field in bodybuilding, everybody does it.
Right.
These giant monsters you see in shows. I mean, how do you think they got that way? It's not a natural, normal thing, but that's the standard for those competitions. But there are other ones now, like the classic physique competitions and all that. And I really think that it's really best not to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a purpose to hormone replacement as you get older, and you're losing everything. Basically, somebody in your 70s or 80s, for them to be able to work out, they need to have some boost to be able to do that. But what I found at my age, now at 75, my testosterone is in the upper 500 level. Now that's enough to build muscle, and I'm totally natural.
Right.
I don't do any of that stuff. I just take a lot of supplements.
Yeah.
A lot of free-form amino acids, Really good diet, I always have been, you know, I don't dissipate, you know, I live a healthy life, and I can still build muscle.
Right.
So I'm more concerned about my injuries and being able to keep doing stuff, because I have some injuries that have, you know, that once you get injured, it sort of stays with you and is right on the verge of happening again if you're not careful. So
Yeah.
I train around certain things I've had surgeries from, so I'm still able to do pretty much what I want to.
And what's you talk about testosterone and having high levels. As you get older, what are some of the key things that people can do to sort of keep that testosterone level high or avoid it dropping down as you age?
Well, one thing is to have it checked every year, have blood work done every year to see where it is.
Yeah.
You know, like for 70-year-old men, usually it's in 200 level.
Really? So
for me being like 567 last time I had it done, it's, you know, people don't even believe that. But there's certain things you can take that are natural anabolics, like fenugreek seed is one of them.
What's that called?
Fenugreek seed.
Fenugreek seed.
That and DH7 keto DHA is a common prescription for boosting your testosterone.
Right.
And just small, they're all natural, they're natural substances. DHA isn't, but it's a hormone over the counter.
Yeah.
You can get. And I'd say that before people start any of that, first of all, guys in their teens and early 20s, their testosterone is already high. They have enough to do it right now. But as you get older, it basically drops about 1% a year, they say. And so by the time you get, you know, 50s, 60s, it's not much left. But of course, everybody's different. So I'd say get it checked, and then there's always hormone replacement doctors around you can go to for testosterone injections and all that. But I'd say before you consider that, I'd say find the natural way to do it better.
Yeah. And in terms of nutrition and exercise, is there things you can do there to optimize?
Make your nutrition calorically dense.
Right.
In other words, it's not about, as you get older, it's not about eating a lot of food. It's by eating a modest amount of food, but packed with nutrition.
Right.
And how do you do that? Of course, you make it as good as possible by eliminating junk food, but you supplement with amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. Also, stuff like, you know, a lot of people take creatine, for example. It's really not a good thing to do. I mean, it can just retain fluid in your whole body. What it does is it produces ATP in your system, adenosine triphosphate. Take ATP instead. It's one of the keys to longevity is taking, you know, a couple 100 milligrams of ATP a day.
Right.
That's what I do.
Yeah. And in terms of work, you know, for other exercises, you know, you read places about, you know, exercises that can help with that, you know, hormone release. Is there any exercises people should do to keep that levels high of testosterone?
I don't think there's anything directly that does that. I think just the whole general concept of training on a regular basis and not hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And certain, you know, I mean, in your workout, you want to, basically, there are exercises that will help large areas grow. We call them compound movements, things like bench press, deadlift, squat. And they're good for getting a large area, but also you have to, basically, your workout should consist of maybe, this is what I did. My first, like on my back day, back biceps forms day, my first exercise was deadlift from the knees up.
Right.
With a wide grip. It's a modified version of what they do in powerlifting. Okay, it's not that.
Okay.
With reverse grip, it's wide grip with straps. And that I found tend to make my shoulders wider and back thicker, but not build vertical height to my traps. And so I would do that as my mass exercise, and then I would do more specialized movements for the back as well after that. On the leg day, it would be squatting. And then leg extension, leg curl, there's others in there too. And on the chest day, it would be bench press, or actually more of a low incline bench press.
Right. Why is that? Just where it hits the chest?
It gets a bigger area. It gets more upper pecs than it does lower.
Right.
So then I go by photos, what I look like in my ongoing photo sessions, how it's shaping up, so I can see what's still needed work.
Yeah.
Looking at my back a lot, for example. See, the thing is, if you go to a contest, you'll see everybody has pretty good fronts standing up. When they turn around to the back, that's where people can get eliminated, because you can't see your back.
Right.
And awareness is the first step. And so you have to see what your back looks like and then work it.
Yeah.
And feel it and see it changing, you know, all that stuff. Like, for example, tensing those muscles. If you want to get all those little muscles out, you have to flex them a lot the last couple of weeks, like the back double bicep pose. holding it for longer periods of time.
Right.
And then using posing as part of your workout, that's a different kind of work. It's like isometric workout.
Right.
All that counts.
Right.
It's like my bodybuilding equation where it says your success is equal to the product of the effort you put into your exercise, your attitude, your recuperation, and your nutrition. You got to attend to all of those details.
Right. And coming back to the posing competition, you know, if we go to the Olympia competitions, which one of those would you say was the sort of the one, I guess from your perspective, the one that you most enjoyed or got the most greatest satisfaction out of?
Well, all of them really, but it was better each year, and probably my highlight was 79,
right.
My best year. Should have retired after that one.
Really?
But you know, you never know when to stop.
No.
You don't. There's no, where do you stop, you know. That's why I was wondering about your title of was it dissolve barriers, or what did you say it was?
Escape your limits.
Escape your limits.
Yeah.
Now, I was thinking about that. I don't think you can ever escape your limits, but you can expand your limits.
Right.
But the thing is, you do have limits, and you always will. And as you get older, you become more limited. Okay. Right. Now, to think that you can still do the same thing you did when you're in your 20s, when you're 70s, you're going to find out that's not true.
Right.
And the way you find out is by getting injured.
Right.
And so I'm against anything that leads to injury, and I'm not trying to escape everything. I know my limits are what's containing me.
Right.
But I do want to expand that.
Right. Okay. And when and the difference between escaping them and expanding them. When you say expand your limits, what do you mean by that then?
You're less limited.
Okay.
Your limits, they're not here, they're out here.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more.
Yeah.
Bit more.
And do you think people, like one of the questions I was going to ask, and we'll bring it up now, and it seems like a good point, but a lot of people seem to they have their own sort of mental limits that they set for themselves, but in most cases they've got the ability to do way more than that. You know, what's your views on kind of, I suppose, society saying, well, this is what you can do? And I know in your case, in terms of bodybuilding, I read the story about, you know, your father was very much, you know, cut the grass, that'll kind of get you in shape. And maybe if you'd have listened to some of the people around you, you may not have achieved what you had.
It's funny, the man telling me that he had a great physique when he was younger, because I have a structure.
Right.
And, you know, of course, when he was telling me that, he didn't look like that. You know, he was overworked and drank and smoked and all that stuff. And so, but, you know, basically it was falling on deaf ears. You know, I was already tuned into what I was after.
Yeah.
You know, I knew that it felt good and it was what I wanted to do.
Right. And how would you apply that to people, I suppose, that may have the potential to be doing a lot more than what you think that they should do? You know, is there any examples in your life where, I guess, people around you or the general perception is that's, you know, you should be there, but you had mentally you felt that no, that's not my limit, and I can do something that people don't think is possible?
That was always a sort of motivation for me, because nobody ever told me you can do it, you have everything it takes. Nobody ever told me that.
Right.
They all said, why are you doing that? What are you, queer? You shaving your legs, you fairy? You know, on and on and on. It was just constant, especially when I lived in Pennsylvania. That's all I ever got. I couldn't wait to leave.
Right. Couldn't
wait to leave. And then I got more accepted, and I was able to find contact who had similar goals to me, and I'd say, go where you're appreciated.
Right.
That was motivation for me to get away from it. Not having to contend with that negativity all the time, because if that's what you think, then you're right. If you think it's not possible, you're right. You've already created your self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't try to rub it off on me, because I'm not there with that.
No.
What's the truth? I don't know. I don't know what's possible. I'm curious, though. I want to see where this leads. And that's always been my attitude on stuff like that.
Where did that come from? Is that just something you had inside you, or did you learn to become more mentally positive? I don't know.
I can't tell. I'm not so much looking for where it came from as how I can use it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, just that attitude. You know, the thing is, there's no such thing as being. There's only becoming.
Right.
You know, everything is changing all the time, and we have become something else always.
Okay.
And so how are we going to reinvent ourselves
on
an ongoing basis?
When you say there's nothing as being, what
Nothing stays the same.
Okay.
It's not as is always, it's changing constantly by the second.
And how do you then, because I know we talked earlier about meditation, how, and I don't meditate, but from what I understand, it's very much being in the now and not being somewhere else. How does what you've just said link into meditation where you're not thinking that you're somewhere else?
How do you do that?
How do you do that? Yeah.
I wrote a jingle about that, and actually it was a part of a movie that I got paid for. It was basically, it's called The Present. The present is a microsecond fiction. Now you see it, now you don't. I can't even put it into diction. The present's just not here anymore. The present won't stay while time slips away. And so there's no such thing as the present. Show me the present. There it is, it's gone. And so what does that mean? So basically, what meditation is emptying your mind.
Right.
It's just emptying out. Now, how do you do that? Basically, I use a mantra. That's why I have these beads. Basically, when I say my mantra, I advance the bead, and it helps me remember to keep doing it. I do that every morning for at least a half hour to an hour when I get up, because I get up early. And I've been saying, I have several mantras I use, but my main mantra, which I call my default mantra, because my consciousness defaults to that in ordinary moments, instead of just letting my mind wander all over the place, the mantra keys in. I've said it I made a vow in 1976 to say it 1 million times a year. And I did when I was competing, and now I'm up to 30 million times total since 76.
Why did you decide to do that?
Because it worked.
Because it worked. Was it again, we spoke about this earlier, was it because you were trying to move away from something that you didn't like that you were doing, or moving towards something?
Well, I'd studied it a lot.
Okay.
I'd studied a lot and learned about the different forms of meditation, tried them all, and just experienced all kind of different things with personal growth systems, on and on. And then I discovered saying a mantra was maybe probably the most useful, because we use words, we think in words, we have words and sounds running through consciousness all the time. If I can control that verbiage,
right?
And it especially became apparent to me in 1979, my last year that I won the Olympia, because the last month I had a house in Palm Springs that was really a gym, that I went the last month and lived there and just trained and got sun and ran at night. And I noticed that if I didn't say my mantra, I would be distracted with thinking about what my competition might be. What if so-and-so looked like that? What if this? What if? All these what if situations. And then I realized that made no difference at all. Only thing that mattered is distracting me. What really mattered is what I did. It didn't make any difference about what anybody else did, because that was I was beyond my control.
Right.
And what I learned is, don't worry about those people. They'll find a way to screw up on their own. There's nothing I have to do to help that along. All I have to do is work on myself. And so I focused on my mantra. And I noticed, like, the last week before I left, I was in such a blissful, calm place that nothing could bring me down. And I went back to Ohio like that and maintained that attitude the whole time, and just blew the competition away with that attitude, because I knew.
Right.
I already knew. See, the whole thing to winning is to win ahead of time. One of the mantras is, I have already won. Now, in 77, when I hadn't already won, I had to convince myself that I was the winner. And so I did so in my advertising. I advertised 77 Year of Zane. And when anybody asked me what my chances were, I said, well, it's my intention to win. There's no chance involved. It's my intention.
Yeah.
And it went on, and then I won, and I was already Mr. Olympia, so I've already won. And then 78 the same way, and 79 I went all out, because I wanted 3 in a row, and I got in really incredible shape.
Right. And so was that mantra part of the competing stage of you preparing mentally for going into that? Just
to clear my mind out.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, I say it so much, I wake up saying it most mornings.
Really?
And then I meditate saying it. And I have different, actually I have workouts for my mind as well as you got all the stuff for the gym. But basically, I have what's called Mind Gym, where I use light sound techniques. They're called entrainment techniques.
Right.
Entrainment means you subject your body to certain frequencies, vibrational pulses, and your body's rhythmic systems, your resonant bodies, natural resonant systems like your breathing, your pulse, nerve impulses, transmission, peristalsis, all those things line up with it.
Right.
And the
What's
process.
a machine or something, is it?
Yeah, we call mind muscle machines. They're like a pair of sunglasses with lights, LED lights on the inside, and they flash different rates. And basically, you get into different states of consciousness and alertness. The faster ones basically energize you, the slower ones make you drowsy. Then there's some frequencies that are very good, like there's the Earth's vibrational frequency, the Schumann resonance frequency, 7.83 hertz.
Right.
It's also the frequency where your brain waves pass from alpha wave into theta waves, solar waves. There's one called gamma frequencies, 40 hertz.
Right.
It's been found that that frequency dissolves beta amyloid plaques in rats. That's the Alzheimer's plaque.
Wow.
So there may be implication for Alzheimer's disease prevention in humans with the 40 hertz frequency. And I do this stuff, I've been doing it for years.
And so does that sort of impress the frequencies onto your body or your brain? It does, right. And then the reverse then, when you say those things, does that change your frequency as well then, if you're saying those positive mantras?
It calms it down. It gives you more coherence, where more of your body, when your body's entrained, everything is vibrating to that.
Right.
And it's a process that mechanical organisms do and living organisms do too. But people have forgotten how to do it.
Right.
But if you look at birds flying, for example, when they fly long distances, they're flying in formation, their wings flapping at the same rate because it's easier. They go on cruise control. So I go on cruise control with this. Basically, I entrain to certain frequencies.
Right. And how did that work then? So I guess, in terms of the, working with your mind, doing the 3 Olympias, how does that work when you didn't achieve what you wanted? So when, you lost, for example, how did you sort of deal with that mentally?
I let life get in the way.
You let life get in the way.
It's almost, when you grow through personal growth, also I think it's a blessing, but it's also can be a curse too.
Right.
And basically there were certain things I didn't deal with, and one of them was anger. My anger was under control, but then in 1980 I had this outburst of anger and basically had a bad accident and fell in the swimming pool, smashed my urethra. Ended up going in the Olympia anyway at a lighter body weight, still in, muscular, but not like I looked the year before.
Right.
And that was the beginning of the end for me. 80, third place in Olympia. 81, which actually was the year I should have competed in, I'd learned this afterwards. I should have not gone in 80. I should have gone in 81 because that would have been great, but I didn't compete in 81. But 82 I came back for London. Being big is because, I thought it got second.
Right.
And then 83 was my last year at it. I tore my rotator cuff in a bike accident.
Right.
It's almost like there was this force in my life at this time that was trying to prevent me from getting there, and it did. It did.
And so looking back, would you, not to put words in your mouth, but trying to understand what happened, would you say that, listening to yourself, you probably should have called it a day, as you said earlier, and just realised it was time to move on to something else? Would you say, looking back, or?
I guess. I mean, see, the thing is, you don't know when to stop. You don't. I mean, I could have stopped. Looking back, so it might have been good to stop them, but I know I would have felt like I haven't gone far enough yet.
Yeah.
I know I would have.
Yeah.
But really, basically, what that all led to was basically I learned not to use negative body metaphors.
What does that mean?
Well, you know what metaphor is?
Yeah.
Figure of speech.
Right.
A negative body metaphor is basically a figure of speech that involves your body in a negative way.
Right.
And so what I was using a lot of times, and I would express that. When I was angry, I would say stuff like, that pisses me off.
Yeah.
Now, what happened with my accident? Right before it happened, I was very angry. I was in Palm Springs, and it was 8 weeks before the Olympia, going for the 4th win. Incredible shape. I mean, just right where I had to be. And I was feeling extremely angry because I was thinking, oh God, another 8 weeks of torture. I hate this, man. My life is nothing but doing this. Oh God, I hate it.
Really?
I went out, sat in my chair, slid into the pool, smashed my urethra, had a catheter inserted. Now, self-fulfilling prophecy. What did I get from that? That pisses me off. I literally created my pissing being off.
That's terrible. I'm not laughing.
Well, people do that all the time. Basically,
yeah.
people say, oh, that's a pain in the neck, and they're sore neck. Why?
Yeah.
You set it up. You set it up by your behavior. Not only saying that, but you did things to make it true.
Yeah.
I did that to make that true. I had the ultimate pissed
You
off.
had the ultimate,
That's as pissed off as I'll ever be, and that's what it led to.
Yeah.
Is the literal manifestation of what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
And
I don't think I'm ever going to
I
say
saw
that
people
again.
doing that all the time. You know, I went to England and I did seminars. I was talking about that. And I said, well, you know, the English use bloody this, bloody that, and everybody laughed. They thought that was so funny, and yet they're bleeding because of that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow, that's quite.
it leads to all kinds. You see, it's self-fulfilling prophecy. How we set up our lives
Yeah.
unconsciously. Everybody does this unconsciously. People talk that way all the time.
Yeah.
Pain in the ass. I can't handle that. That makes me sick. Get off my back. Pain in the neck. I can't, you know, on and on and on. Can't swallow that. I'm sick and tired. You sure are.
Yeah.
You sure are. You say that, you're right. Nobody's going to argue with. You're starting your cycle for self-fulfilling prophecy, and it can happen to you if you don't. And so I learned that.
And you use this sort of daily mantra then to sort of shut that out of your
I'm
brain.
far away from that anyway. I don't use that.
Right.
I've been off negative body metaphors for many years,
Yeah.
but I don't do that. You know, and basically the mantra just keeps me on a pure course.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Because that's one of the highest I can say.
Yeah.
I'm focused on that.
And so coming out of the being, you know, I guess Mr. Olympia and everything that comes with that, the sort of spotlight and the magazines and everything, how did you then sort of, I guess, and you use the word reinvent, but how did you reinvent yourself and go from, I guess, being wanted to then probably not being in the spotlight anymore? Was that something you were just ready to get out of, or was it you were? Yeah.
Well, after 1983, I knew it was all over.
Right.
Because I was trying to win four Olympias, and instead I got 4th place. I said, well, there's my 4. Okay, so I sort of lived by dreams and omens, you know. So that was my omen to stop. And I knew that was it, and that was sort of hard. I was 41. And it was a good time. I mean, I was in great shape my last show.
Yeah.
You know, the photos looked like the winner on the photos. And so I had all that. And, you know, I realized, I saw the writing on the wall already. Lee Haney's placing ahead of me, you know, and the new guy, big monster. I saw that's what it's going to be from now on.
Right.
And so I bowed out. And that was hard. And that's where bodybuilding as character armor then became bodybuilding as character completion, or more of a personal growth psychology. And it wasn't about me as much anymore as it was before. It was now about me spreading the word about what I've learned and helping other people and earning a living from that.
Right.
And I think that's the highest thing is in your life, is earn your living doing something you love and are good at.
Yeah.
And I think I've managed that.
Yeah.
And so I'm perfectly happy with the setup.
And that body armor story then, just so would you say that one of the motivations for you to get to where you were was that, you know, using it as body armor as opposed to, you know, where you got to when you stopped doing it, which is, you know, using bodybuilding in a different way to help other people? Would you think?
Well, the body armor got thinner when I stopped. See, I wasn't as big, and the muscular wasn't as thick.
Yeah.
And so what that armor originally did is it covered up, first of all, your core, which is basically love and compassion, which right away gets covered up by fear. And then what covers up the fear is flesh.
Right.
And so as the flesh basically thins out from not training heavy anymore, you get in touch with fear.
Right.
And so now I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid of a lot of stuff. But basically it's because my armor is thinned out, and so I'm confronting things that I didn't before. I mean, I was bulletproof before.
Yeah.
When I was competing, I was bulletproof. Nothing could stop me. I was right in there all the time. And now I'm afraid to drive my car.
Right.
It's true to some extent. There's all that stuff there, and now I'm confronting it. But basically, you get to the point where it's not about you anymore so much.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding is the art of selfishness. I mean, it's all about you all the time. I mean, I'm just glad I found a woman that was able to put up with that and actually shared with me in that. But it changed, and it had to change. And I think it has to change in everybody's life sooner or later.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to gyms, you see guys in there, they're maybe in their 50s or 60s, but they're inside, they're 8 years old.
Right.
That's their level. They're still bodybuilding is still armoring. They're still armoring.
Right.
So when you stop armoring, you could start growing in other ways.
And how would you do that then? How would someone who, after listening to this, realizes that they are armoring in terms of using that as a way of protection, how would they get over themselves and...
Well, find a way you could help somebody else.
Right, okay.
I mean, I also ask is there anything such as true altruism?
Right.
Is there really what you might call ultimate compassion, where you do things just automatically for the sake of helping other people? See, I'm not like that. Some people are. I have relative compassion.
Right.
I help this. I'm admitting this to you now. I help other people and do things for other people because it makes me feel good.
Okay.
That's still selfish.
Right.
But it's not as selfish.
Okay.
I'm not just blur out. Well, can I help you? I'll give you everything. I'm not like that. I'm very measured and still, draw the lines where I feel like they need to be for survival. But I'm basically interested in helping people in a positive way to achieve what their goals, if it's along these lines.
Yeah.
And teaching a total approach for them, not just working out with weights. That's important too, but it's about nutrition and attitude and everything else. The way you talk too.
Yeah.
Right speech. Talk the right way, because other people hear you, and your body hears every word you say.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And it's never finished.
No. And your meditation, I know that's a big part of what you do. What's the reason that's such an important, has a certain important place in your life? Is that to kind
clear my mind?
Right.
Just to get all the cobwebs out and empty my mind. Learn to shut your mind off. It's the opposite of thinking. It's not about thinking, it's about doing nothing. It's about having nothing going on.
Right.
It's about getting a vacuum, not here so much, but here. Because only when you're vacuum are you creative. When you clear all this crap out, and it's crap, believe me, if you don't do stuff like this, you're going to just be ruminating and thinking stuff that either false or stupid or never come true, false imagination. You avoid all that. You basically are focusing on something which ultimately, if I meditate long enough, basically everything stops and I'm left with nothing.
Right.
I just want to create that space where creativity can enter.
Okay.
If you don't do that, you're not going to get any of that. And then the other thing is, what about that creativity entering? That's also a distraction.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like the Zen approach. What should you do? You're on this journey, you want to get to the goal, to the source. You go straight there. No distractions along the way. Or everything along the way is so beautiful and unique and creative. I think I'm going to stop here and enjoy this for a while. I'm more or less into that.
Right.
I'm not going straight to there. Although maybe some days I'm more like that.
Yeah.
But it's different all the time. So
I used to, because I suppose I don't meditate, and with the business and everything you do, there's always things going on your phone, and
but you're busy all the time and you're focused. You see, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. I deliberately have my day structure. I'm not busy that much.
Okay.
I mean, I have things I do for part of the day, but it's a small part of the day.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, I'm writing or focused on something, or meditating, or I do a lot of writing, or music. I play music. I generally play about 20 instruments every day, depending guitars, flutes, or harmonicas, some variation of it.
Right. And do you think if someone someone is in business, if they're opening a gym or running the business, which if you run the studio like this, there's a lot of work in terms of getting clients and working with clients and supporting them. Do you think that it's still a good thing to have that, to take that step out and meditate and put things in order to perspective, as an example? Is that?
Some people like to have a lot of stuff going on all the time. It's like a juggling act,
Yeah.
you know. I'm not like that. I can only do one thing at a time. I'm very focused.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can't do more than one thing. I can't even play guitar and harmonica at the same time because it's two separate things.
Yeah.
I can do each one separately pretty well,
Yeah.
but not together. I just like that. I'm just not, divided attention is not, you know, my forte.
It's not work for you.
No.
No. So I've got a couple of quick fire questions, but before that, just tell us a little bit about, because I think today, if I'm right, today's the day where you've just launched your new book. Tell us a little bit about what it is, what's in it.
Here it is. Well, I've always wanted to get everything into one book, and this is it.
Yeah.
It's everything I've written over the past 30 years or so, rearranged and condensed into one volume, and it pretty much covers everything. That's why we call it the ultimate reference book.
Right.
It's 436 pages, over 500 photos, and it's everything I've ever done. It's against the background of my career, starting out and then what I did at the time, how I thought, how I felt, how I trained, and it goes through everything from when I started at an early age of 14 years old up to now.
Right. And who would get a lot out of reading that book? Who would you say would it
Everybody.
be? Everybody, yeah. Where will it be available?
Well, this will be developed directly from us.
Yeah.
FrankZane.com on the website.
Yeah.
But basically, this is one of the themes. This is from Friedrich Nietzsche's work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Okay, and this is just the three metamorphoses of the spirit do I designate to you. How the spirit becomes a camel, the camel becomes a lion, and the lion at last becomes a child. That's the evolution of the spirit. Think about that. And so there's things I say, basically I have a lot of metaphors like that in here.
That's very deep. I'm trying to get my
It's
head
all
around.
deep, but basically bodybuilding metaphors, how do they relate to you? Here's one called The Old Weaver.
Right, can't read that one.
Interesting about that one. So basically that's the solitary pine. It's about a pine tree, about a big old pine tree. Well, here's basically is what it's about. Once upon a time there was a seeker after truth. In his quest for higher learning, the seeker met a master who gave him a program which would lead to enlightenment. Many years passed until the seeker was performing his exercises perfectly. People came and watched and then began to copy him because of his skill and success. Eventually, the seeker became enlightened, leaving behind him a devoted following of people who continued his way. However, they never did experience enlightenment because they were beginning at the end of the seeker's course of study. This is not the end of my course of study, it's the course of study. And that's where it starts. So contemplating this parable, I realized my personal involvement, following not one but several masters and improving and improvising programs from knowledge gained led me in the direction of enlightened bodybuilding. Working with these programs for more than 60 years enabled me to master the craft. Right. So that's what this is all about. It's everything, and it's like people that Joe Weider, Rich Park, all these people that I've met and trained with, competition.
So it's pretty much your life.
Yeah, it's my life.
All in one book. So you can get it from frankzane.com.
frankzane.com.
Anywhere else it's going to be available?
No.
No. You've got to come to
Not sold in stores.
Okay.
Only our store.
Yeah. Okay, Frank, and we just have one question here, a social media question from a gentleman called Richard Martinez. And his question is, was it nutrition, square meals around the clock, or hard work in the gym that gave you the best results, or both?
Not only is it both, it's more than both. It's not only nutrition and exercise, it's also your attitude and how you recuperate, which we talked about, the bodybuilding equation. Right. It's only when you pay attention to everything that you get maximum results. Now, some things may seem more important than others. For example, if you don't eat right, not much is going to happen. So you sort of have to put nutrition first, but that's not all you need to do. You got to train correctly and then have the right attitude about all of it. Not be negative, not dissipate or waste energy, conserve energy. All of that matters.
Yeah.
So we teach that's a holistic approach, you might say. We teach a holistic approach.
Yeah, so there's no magic pill you've got to kind of do,
it's
have
just
everything.
work over time.
Yeah.
It's continue doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, bodybuilding is for your lifetime. It's not just to do now, it's to do now and continue doing, in whatever form you can as you get older.
Yeah.
So I intend to do that.
Great. Thanks,
I don't know
mate.
if I'll be doing this when I'm over 100, but probably
You never
not.
know.
Probably not.
So just a couple of quick questions then before we finish. You mentioned some of your reading, but what are some of your popular books or audios that you're reading or listening to at the moment?
Well, a couple of years ago I had a Kindle, and I have about 300 books on there, and I read a lot of Buddhist scriptures,
Right.
a lot of the sutras, try to figure out what they mean, okay? And I'm a student of that. And, you know, science, basically what consciousness is all about, metaphysical stuff. I'm reading one about out-of-body experiences right now.
Right.
About meditation, dreams, you know, all that kind of thing. Developing special powers. I'm really fascinated by all that stuff.
Right.
And so that's why I do the practices basically. And also I find that music is sort of like a form of grace for me. That it's basically a sign of when I play, and it seems like every time I play, I'm a little bit better than the last time I played.
Right.
And to me, that's a sign of spiritual growth. And the fact that it's always sounding better to me is basically a gift back to me, telling me that I'm progressing spiritually.
Right, okay. Yeah, it's a message.
So that's how I look at that.
Yeah.
And that's my goal for as I get older, because I see, you know, the body fades, eventually the body disappears, but you know, what survives is your mind.
Right.
Your mind goes on. And so I want to build this mind as much as I can and basically develop awareness through that.
Right.
And so I'm always studying in those areas.
Okay.
Transpersonal psychology, you could call it,
Okay.
which is the fourth force in psychology. It's about going beyond the physical, you know, psychology, meditation, and it's, you know, I got involved in that in the 1970s, and then studied psychology, got a master's degree in the 90s, wrote a book on that, my research, and still continue along those lines.
Right. Okay. What was your last workout?
I don't know. Well, let's see. I had a client here last week, and worked upper body one day and legs the next, and I worked upper body with him.
Yeah.
We went through the workouts of just basically all the upper body workouts, and leg work the next day. I have some leg injuries, so I didn't do that. So one of the people I trained came over, worked out with him for that. And so, you know, basically it's to teach people correct movements. So.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. What's your favorite exercise?
I don't know. I don't really have any favorite. I try to be impartial. I do a lot of back work.
Right.
You know, I like doing back work, for example, because it's just very practical, having strong back and posture and all that.
Yeah.
And you know, anything that basically, you know, I have some injuries that I nurse, and basically anything that lessens pain, you know, and so I guess, you know, any exercise, basically that combines a rubber cable. You can see my weight stacks here are strapped with rubber bands.
Rubber bands, yeah.
Any exercise that I can do weights enhanced by rubber cables.
Right.
As part of the movement.
Right.
Because I don't have to train as heavy.
Right.
And anything that gives me a good pump, you know, that swell feeling in your muscles is what I'm after on everything. I have some ideas I'm testing out. One of them is what you call the one-sided workout.
Right.
Is basically, it's an arm workout where you only work one arm in a workout.
Really? And what's the thought process behind
Is
that?
to pack as much blood into that area without sending it anywhere else.
Okay.
And see, you know, you basically, let's say you're working your arms, 2 arms at a time. I mean, blood's going here, blood's going there, half as much here, half as much here. But when you work one arm, it all goes there. So pack as much into that with one arm exercises, dumbbell or cable or whatever. I do 2 biceps, 2 triceps, and maybe some side raises, and then I leave it there. I let it go down there, and then maybe later in the day I'll work the other arm, or the next day.
Interesting.
And it works.
Yeah.
I'm testing it out now.
Right.
Trying to get people to do it.
I'll have to give it on a try, actually. What's your morning routine?
Get up and meditate. Take supplements, make breakfast, eat breakfast,
What time do you get up normally?
4.
4.
But then I answer emails and all that, and do some mailer stuff, and write whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
So I'm basically done with everything by 10 a.m. Then the rest of the day.
Yeah. Rest of the day free. What 75? What keeps you motivated? You know, you work coming up with new workouts to sort of find new and better ways of doing things. What
keep going.
Yeah, what keeps you going and motivated?
I know sometimes I sort of like waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know, what else is going to happen in my life that might, because things come up, like I've had injuries and things like that, and you never know when that can happen. It's just being careful. I'm more about being careful and not taking risks than ever before as I get older.
Yeah.
I hold on to banisters as I go up and down steps. I don't want to have any accidents because that's what stops you.
Right.
Injuries are what stops you. And so I'm very aware of what I do as far as putting myself out there for possible injuries.
Yeah.
I don't take risks anymore.
No, it makes sense. What's your next personal or professional goal on your list? Your next thing that you want to achieve that you've not yet done?
Well, getting this product situation with my leg blaster, the new book. We're developing a protein powder supplement, getting that done. Those are my immediate goals.
Yeah.
That are still unsettled, still up in the air and haven't really come to fruition yet.
Right.
Then after that, I'll think of something else to do,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But it's to grow and expand, and Julie's doing a book, I'm helping her with that.
Right.
And so just and then continuing working with people and expanding. I mean, I don't have anything definite in mind. I mean, I'm not trying to make things happen. I'm just basically, one of my goals is beyond effort. That's my motto.
Beyond effort.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
What does it mean to you?
Beyond effort.
I'm beyond effort.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like the word beyond because it means that it's there's no effort required. It's beyond what you need to do, and it will just.
I'm not trying to do anything.
But it will, okay.
I'm letting things come to me. I'm like a magnet.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm practicing magnetizing.
Right.
Pulling things in.
Yeah, I like that. Nice one. And then finally, what's the sort of, if there was one thing that you want to be remembered for when you move on to another place, what would that be?
Teacher, I guess.
Teacher. Yeah.
Because I've always been. That's why that was what I started out doing. I was education major, secondary education major in college. I got a degree in psychology and a master's degree in psychology. So it was basically to increase my knowledge of what motivates people, what motivates me. And basically I can see that, why things happen in life is because of something's wrong. Why do pearls grow in oysters? Because a speck of sand gets in there. That's not planned. Everything's like that. Nothing happens because everything's perfect. Things happen because something's out of whack.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't have to pay attention for that to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen anyway. I just deal with it.
Yeah.
Finding motivation in everything. That's my ongoing task. Is, things happen in your life. What can you do with that? You can use it as a source of motivation. That's all you can do, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
There's some benefit there. It may not be apparent right now, but basically it's going to turn into that.
Yeah.
And usually the things that are the greatest disturbance, the most catastrophic, have the most potential for positive gain and growth. The reason they've happened because you have gotten so far in the wrong direction that it had to manifest to tell you to turn around and go do it. And that's all that means. And so I look for stuff like that. I mean, that's how I'm looking to reframe things, putting them in a better perspective, a better frame.
Right.
And whatever. It just means changing the context or the meaning. It's all right. Something happens. Remember, I don't know if you remember Lyle Alzado, who was a football player for the Rams.
No.
And he passed away years ago, but I remember him saying, he says when he was growing up, the thing that was on his mind all the time was to get into a really good fight over the weekend and beat the hell out of somebody. And then he says, "Wouldn't you know, I ended up doing that every Sunday afternoon and getting paid for it." So you change the context. Same motivation, just in a different context.
Yeah.
So finding contextual places where you can fit things in is what it's all about. Or what it means. It means something different.
Yeah.
Make it mean something else.
Yeah.
Now, not that I'm that good at doing all this, but you know, is not sort of beyond, that part is not beyond effort for me, but I'm trying to make it that way.
Yeah.
So it's just my natural state.
Yeah.
Well, it's just your natural state, and you don't have to think about it. It just happens.
Yeah.
It's just natural. So I'm always away from that.
Well, Frank, we could speak all afternoon. I know you've got things to do. I appreciate your time. There's some real words of wisdom there. I'm going to check out the book. I'd certainly recommend anyone.
It's well worth it.
frankzane.com if you want the book. And thank you again for your time. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure, anytime.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.